That was amazing. Sam is literally leading this new revolution of everything. I think AI is going to literally change everything. If I had to encourage you to focus on two things, it would be financial literacy as a civil rights issue of this generation. And by the way, thank you, the National Urban League. Mark Morial was on, president. Thank you, the NAACP, Derek. Thank you, Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson's, all the heroes and sheroes who helped to get us here. We're standing on all of those shoulders. I know Reverend Jackson's watching. I just got a note from his son. But financial literacy, I think is the civil rights issue of this generation, and AI literacy. Those are two things that after you deal with your civil rights, you need to adopt your civil rights right now. And on that point, I get to join my friend Kevin Boucher. Are we going to Doug or going to Thasunda? All right, because I'm trying to be respectful here. I'm shutting up actually, because I see the CEO of the $2 trillion company online, and I think we should want to hear from her. I'm going to shut up and let the moderator speak. Frank, you got to just tell me to be quiet.
Hey, John, number one, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Mr. Mayor, it's a pleasure to be here with you as well. Thank you, everybody, for letting me be a part of this moment. We're going to get to our panel right now. It's titled A Moment of Truth, Assessing the Economic Landscape. We're going to talk about some of that economic uncertainty that's currently really impacting America. This panel of business and policy leaders, we're going to analyze today's economic climate and its specific impacts on underrepresented communities. We're also going to talk about the immediate realities, potential economic shifts, and maybe most importantly, John, the critical opportunities for economic advancement. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce the members of this panel. We have Thasunda Brown Duckett, the president and CEO of TIAA, the Honorable Mick Mulvaney, co-chair of Actum, also the former White House chief of staff, Joseph Otting, executive chair, president and CEO of Flagstar Financial, also the 31st U.S. Comptroller of the Currency, and Steve Steiner, chairman, president and CEO of Huntington Bank. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Steiner, I know you have to get going very shortly, so I'm just going to begin with you first. There's a lot to talk about, and obviously a lot of news about the economy and some big shifts. How does the current economic environment, how does it uniquely impact Americans in the bottom two quartiles or in middle-income families and lower-income families?
Frank, I understand that Steve Steiner was having some technical difficulties. He may or may not be on. So.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be there.
He's been texting me for some reason. He couldn't get on.
Okay, well, we're going to hopefully involve him in the conversation, but Ms. Brown Duckett, we're going to come over to you. The same question, some of these big economic shifts, how do you see it impacting middle-income families and lower-income families?
Yeah, thank you. And John, just thank you so much for the invitation on this historic day. It really means a lot, and it's such an important conversation as you think about the work that you and so many others have and continue to do.
You're living with me, Thasunda.
When I think about the question, I think what's on the minds of everyone, if there was one word, it would be uncertainty. And it's not just looking at it at the macro level, it's looking at what it means at the household level. And when you think about the lower two quartiles, you're talking about really tough trade-offs. You're talking about the inflationary pressures, you're talking about the concerns of tariffs, you're talking about job uncertainty, you're talking about the transformation that's happening around the marketplace. And I also think that the impossible trade-offs are where people are having to have conversations between gas, rent, food, and do I continue to invest? Do I stay invested? Can I afford to continue to contribute to my retirement? And so I think some of the biggest concerns that we have, particularly those in the lower two quartiles, is the lack of buffer. When you are navigating market volatility, higher income earners have a sound buffer to navigate through. I think what we have to be mindful of is how do we help everyday Americans ensure that the short-term trade-off does not lead to long-term impact that goes directly to your stat, John, when you think about the negative net worth. And so I do think we have to ensure that the decisions are well thought of. I think it's a very important time that we are educating and reaching out to people, re-examining their balance sheet so that they can navigate this environment, but also make sure that they can navigate it in a way that they're not compromising their future retirement or compromising their future ability to transfer, assets to their family. So it's a real issue. It's a real problem for everyday Americans, a lot of anxiousness. And I think it's the role of all of us to make sure we're doing everything that we can to help people stay the course and navigate some pretty difficult times for lower income workers.
Well, thank you for that answer. Mick Mulvaney, I'm going to come over to you now. Same question.
Yeah, I'm concerned. The tariffs bother me when it comes to the impact on the bottom two quartiles of the economy. Tariffs are a sales tax. You can argue whether or not they're going to be a dollar for dollar sales tax. If you add $1 of tariff, does it actually go to $1 of the price of a good? There's all sorts of arguments as to whether or not that's the case, but it's going to be an increase in some fashion. And sales taxes are regressive, and they hit the lower income quartiles more than they do the upper income quartiles. I mean, most people watching this show right now, this presentation, can make discretionary decisions about how to spend their money. The car, maybe they buy a new car, maybe they don't. If you're in the bottom 2/5 and your car breaks down, you don't have a choice. And you're going to have to pay the higher tariffs. You have to pay the higher tariffs for a new car, a used car, even the old parts for your old car. It's going to be a disproportionate impact on the lower 2/5. That being said, if I wanted to take the other side of the argument, I think that the president is desperately trying to rebuild the American middle class through American manufacturing, and that would dramatically help the bottom 2/5. So, he's sort of gambling here, and let's hope he's correct. But as I sit here and look at just the last 48 hours, my answer to this question was different 2 days ago. But just in the last 48 hours, I look at this with a great deal of concern over the impact on the folks at the bottom of the economic ladder.
Joseph Otting, coming over to you. Same question. Obviously, you have a lot of exposure to people of a range of incomes operating a bank.
Okay. Thank you very much, Frank. And John Bryant, good friend and leader in the Operation Hope team. Thanks for making this event possible. I know you did it under short conditions. It's really an honor to be here and celebrate the great contributions made to America by Dr. King. His principles of hope for all, economic justice, a nonviolent world, and freedom were really true 56 years ago, and they're just as evident and true today. I echo Mick's thoughts a little bit as I was preparing for my comments 3 days ago. They do take a slight turn, I think, today as well. And as we came into this week, I think there were clear aspects where, certain parts of the economy were starting to feel the stress of high inflation. Those are evidenced by, people's credit cards being high balances and past due mortgages, past due auto loans, and the impact that has, where, as Ms. Brown said, the ability for those homes to sit around the table and decide which bills they're going to pay and which ones they can pass on. And frequently that does not get resolved because there isn't a savings in those families and the buffer is not there. I do think, we're at a critical juncture here. And while the last 24 hours has driven down interest costs and has driven down energy prices, it'll take a vibrant economic environment where employment remains strong and people can self-select into new jobs for us to be able to kind of get out of this hole. So I do think this is a very pivotal time. As the other panelists have said, usually the negative economic impact are felt on the lower end of the economic scale. And we have been, I think, in that period of time for the last 6 to 9 months.
You both said that your view of things changed in the last couple of days. Obviously, a big announcement when it comes to tariffs. And then today we had the jobs report that was actually stronger than expected. Thasunda, coming over to you. What economic indicators are you looking at as a possible predictor of improvement or more challenges for the bottom two quartiles?
Yeah, clearly the jobs are really important to see what's happening. And so I think it is positive, at least now, to see that it's pretty strong. I think the other piece is consumer spending data. Definitely gives us insight into financial confidence or stress consumers are experiencing. Delinquency rates are also, very important. I know John talks about the importance of a high credit score. And so the need to understand what's happening with delinquencies, I think can be an important watch item. So far, I'd say delinquency rates has risen a bit, particularly on credit cards, but they're still historically low. But I do think, given the market uncertainty, it's a watch item. And I would also say, just given, my focus in understanding retirement security, I do think there's an opportunity for us as leaders where we all have, 401k plans or 403b plans to make sure that we're looking at the data to see, are we seeing our own employees not contributing or reducing their contribution? Are we seeing hardship withdrawals increasing? And so I do think that there are indicators that we as employers can take a look to also complement what you're seeing at the macro level. What's happening with our own employee base, and are we seeing them taking advantage of access in a way that may have long-term stress in the system, particularly for the people that work incredibly hard for our organizations.
All right, sorry about that. I got some technical difficulties, got kicked out, but made it my way back in. Mick, coming over to you, former White House Chief of Staff. Certainly there's a lot of economic indicators that any president looks at for signs of stress in the economy. What are you looking at going forward? Obviously consumer spending data is key, retail sales data is key. Are there other additional indicators that you watch?
Yeah, there's a couple ones that probably don't hit most people's radars. We follow them a little bit as a community, but we follow these fairly closely when I ran the Office of Management and Budget. One was the quit rate. The quit rate is that, the number of people who are disconnected from their jobs, separated from the job by their own free will. We loved to see that number going up, because what that spoke of was a confidence in the economy at the very basic level. And if you're looking for new business formation, the quit rate is something that we'd watch very closely. When it comes to unemployment, we didn't really, we pay attention to the unemployment rate. Everybody does, because it's sort of a top line number. But keep in mind, it's a quotient. It's the number of people looking for a job who don't have one. If you're not looking for a job, you don't count in the unemployment number. If none of the people on the screen here had a job, but none of us were looking for a job, the unemployment rate would be 0. So the number you really look at is that monthly number. Anything above 225 is usually a healthy number in our economy. If you start to see a couple of months below that, you can pay attention to the rate if you want to, but it's those numbers of jobs that are actually the hard number that we tracked a lot more closely at OMB. We also followed, believe it or not, we followed the SSDI claims, Social Security Disability Insurance claims. And if we saw those spike, oftentimes those are a substitute for folks who have run out of unemployment benefits. So those are the two maybe non-traditional numbers that we looked at that other folks don't look at, the quit rate and the SSDI claims rate.
All right, so really interesting. So it's still tied to the job market. Joe, coming over to you. You mentioned credit card delinquencies a bit earlier. What data do you focus on? And is there something coming up, whether it's the Fed, commentary and the J. Powell press conference? Is there something coming up that's going to give you a sense of the strength of the economy right now, or that you look to?
Yeah, I think the two prior panelists addressed the employment issue well, and I think Mick's comments are important. I think the other one in that bucket I would put is job openings. What does the job openings environment look like for people to go in either to new opportunities, and is that increasing or decreasing? And then to your question, Frank, we obviously continue to look very closely at interest rates and energy prices. We think those are big drivers, that have wide swaths in the economic environment. If people can either get into homes at, a 5% mortgage versus a 7%, that opens up a pretty significant path of people who could not afford a home at 7%, but they can at 5%. And if there's one kind of positive that's come out of this disruption, we've seen both in the 10 and the 5-year, which are frequent measures for home mortgage, that those rates have pulled back, anywhere from 50 to 80 basis points in the last week. So I think there's some optimism that those rates will be positively impacted into the mortgage marketplace.
We're almost out of time, so you have time for one more question. We're going to go around one more time. Thasunda, I'm going to come back over to you. Maybe one of the most important questions when it comes to all this.
Hey, Frank, hold on. Joseph, stop talking in Japanese. What's a basis point? People know what a basis point is. Joseph Otting, what's a basis point? Can you hear me? Joseph Otting?
Joe, I don't know if you can hear John. He's talking to you directly.
No,
yeah. You're talking another language. He said basis points. We can't assume people understand these terms. By the way, there are thousands of people watching. It's being streamed by Roland Martin, streamed by Breakfast Club. I just got a note from the Connecticut Department of Corrections. They're streaming it. I love it. But please break this stuff down so everybody understands. What's a basis point, Joseph?
Well, basis points is 100 basis points equals 1%. So when
Perfect.
10 basis points, that's 10/100ths of a percent.
Yeah. By the way, Joseph runs a $100 billion bank and is making huge commitments to Community Reinvestment Act. He's a fabulous leader who I trust. And for those who don't know what TIAA CREF is, Thasunda Duckett is probably the most powerful woman in corporate, not just in corporate America, but in the world. Her platform is $2 trillion. Is that right?
Depends on the market. It's over $1.4 trillion, but we got to see what's happening in the market. It's probably a little less right now.
In regard, we're proud of you. And Mick Mulvaney is a fair dealer. He's a good man. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on the most important things. We won't get into a debate about stuff we can't control today, but we even agreed on that about 2 weeks ago. Mick always tries to find the common ground, whenever we disagree without being disagreeable. Most of that's on CNBC. Thank you, Mick, and thank you, Frank.
Oh, of course. Do we have time for one more question, John, or do we have to wrap this up?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
I'll stop talking.
I think it's you and the mayor's show. I think you talk as much as you want. One last question. Thasunda, we're going to begin with you. What are the greatest economic opportunities emerging right now?
Yeah, and I mean, it's in the plan, and John kicked it off. I do think that AI is just a tremendous opportunity, but it's not just AI itself, it's the entire ecosystem, around it. When you think about data centers, infrastructure, when you think about what it can fuel in terms of new job formations. And so that is something I think for all of us to get excited about. I also do think it's important to highlight that it will take public-private partnership to continue to drive long-term economic growth. And so I think as we think about things to be excited about, I'd say one, our economy long-term is resilient. And so though we have bumps, I think we play the long game. We still have innovation. We still have opportunities. Technology, I think, will be at the forefront of that growth, but policy will matter. And lastly, I would say, as I think through opportunities for economic growth that's emerging, that's a positive on the policy side, I do think public policy coming together around secure retirements. That is something that if we want to make sure that we can have healthy balance sheets for families, we have to make sure that people can have a secure retirement. And there's been some really good bipartisan policy to make it easier for everyday Americans to have access to workplace plans and making it easier for people to contribute. And so I do think what that can create allows people to not have to transfer that burden to their families, their children, in order to stimulate the economy. I think you have to have a strong retirement system in order to do that. But technology, I think, is underpinning real economic growth long term.
All right, Mick, same question. Where are you seeing emerging opportunities in this current environment?
I'm going to go very quickly, and I'm going to go the entire other end of the spectrum from what everybody else has said. I'm going to move as far away from AI as you can and get down to the micro trades. Jay Powell today got asked a question about the home building industry. There's a tremendous opportunity out there for folks in the bottom half of the economic ladder to lift themselves up through skilled trades. There's 5 trades. I'm a 3rd generation home builder. For every 5 tradesmen that retires this year, there'll be only 2 coming to take the place. It's a tremendous economic advantage. We need to figure out a way to still promote education and financial literacy for sure. But folks who work with their hands are going to be able to make a lot of money going forward to the next generation. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity that's being overlooked at the bottom half of the economic scale.
All right, Joe, you're up. We're not going to ask you to do any more definitions, but where are you seeing emerging opportunities?
There's going to be a test afterwards, Joseph.
I think Mick and Ms. Brown's comments were right on. But the one thing that I would add, which I think really makes a difference, is I'm a big believer of bringing underrepresented people into the work environment and giving them exposure. And whether that's summer events or holiday events where they get exposure to what a company looks like, what's the environment like, what's legal, what's HR, what's technology, and giving those people an opportunity to see a world that they're not exposed to. It's fundamental, but it changes people's dreams and aspirations. And while all the other stuff is important, I think frequently it starts at the individual level.
All right, we're going to have to leave the conversation there. Thank you both, or all 3 of you, I should say, for your time and for your insight. Thasunda Brown Duckett, President and CEO of TIAA. The Honorable Mick Mulvaney, co-chair of Actum and former White House Chief of Staff, and Joseph Otting, Executive Chair, President, and CEO of Flagstar Financial, also the 31st U.S. Comptroller of the Currency. Thank you again. John, coming back over to you.
Frank, thank you. And really, you think about that group of panelists, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
You had government, you had, which is government receipts, taxes coming in because based on the growing economy. You had banking, financing that, and you had Thasunda, Duckett. You have TIAA Craft managing investment portfolios. If you go now to my business plan of America, by the way, they're all available on the website now for Dream Forward. Go there, download them. They're free. They're completely as I wrote them. And now the Emory University Department of Economics and the Clark Atlanta School of Business are both going to be taking these plans along with 100 founding delegates who are watching online, by the way, and they'll be writing addendums and amendments to these plans and growing them over preceding months. But all three of these are really foundational to that business plan.